Okay, so said absent and Councilmember Wynn present, board members present.
Thank you very much. I think because of some recent developments that we've had, we may be having more of a discussion as opposed to a vote today, other than the approval of the minutes. I therefore don't think we need to have a 10-minute recess, and I don't frankly know if we even have any comments right now anyway, based on the items on the agenda. So rather than breaking, my suggestion would just be, since the approval of the minutes is a really pro forma function, and one that really doesn't require a lift, to power through, go through the agenda. I will read it all from 1 through 5, and then move for the minutes, and then have a discussion on items 3 and 4, if that works for everybody. Good. All right. So item number 1, roll call. Item number 2, approval of the minutes from August 4, 2020 Quality of Life Committee meeting. Item number 3, comprehensive zoning ordinance notice and appeals. A, discussion of M-326 regarding amendments to CZO appeal and notice processes. Number 4, discussion of encroachments policy. And number 5, adjournment. So now going back to item number 2, may I have a motion to approve the August 4, 2020 minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Palmer.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wynn. Any opposed? How about you say that? That way we can know that it's all ayes across the board. All right, so that's 4 ayes in favor of the Quality of Life Committee meetings. With us on the call is Ashley Becknell. Ashley, I appreciate your being here on behalf of Safety and Permits and making this time. Good to see you. What prompted all this has been some really good discussion between our office and the administration, primarily on the issue of what notice should look like on really big permits, right? There's all sorts of permits that the city does in terms of HVACs or electrical or floor work. And I think what we're really interested in is substantive permits where somebody is converting their house or doing new construction or something along those lines. And so with that, Ashley, I'm going to hand things over to you to discuss what NoticeMe is, if you don't mind, maybe just starting at the very beginning and how it works, then what potentially can be done to NoticeMe to augment it so it helps, I think, meet the needs of residents and people who are interested in this process, what they could expect in a change to NoticeMe and what the timeline looks like. And then Ashley, one other thing we didn't have an opportunity to discuss, but somebody raised by email today that probably should be an ending point maybe, is what happens if the internet or cyber attack happens again, how something can function during that time period. But I view that as the exception probably and not the rule. So I'd really prefer to talk about how NoticeMe's come back online, what's being done, and what's being proposed. So with that, I'll turn things over to you for the explanation. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. So NoticeMe is a product that the city developed in order to provide citizens with notice of various land use actions. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. I know right now it's been disabled, but I can walk y'all through how NoticeMe works and what it looks like once I get that permission. All right. So NoticeMe is a website. It's noticeme.nola.gov. Once you sign in, which is very easy to do, you put in an email, it sends you a confirmation number and you type that in. You can select any area you'd like by just drawing an area on the map, or you can select by neighborhood associations and council districts. And when you go to add area, it'll tell you how to do that with a series of clicks. And you can name the area for yourself and decide what kinds of decisions you want to be notified of. Right now, include Board of Zoning adjustments and decision appeals, City Planning Commission actions, including conditional uses, text amendments, map amendments, subdivisions. You can also choose to get notified of zoning verifications or non-conforming use determinations, as well as any indies occurring in your neighborhood. So what we would do is work with IT to add the two categories of renovation permits and new construction permits to this list of actions you could get notified of. Once you've signed up and you've created your area, the way that it looks, you get an email from the system that'll look like this. I've done a little bit of redacting because this is from my personal NoticeMe. But you essentially can either get a weekly or a daily digest. This is a weekly digest. And within the area that I had selected, it's showing me a BZA hearing at 7621 through 7623 Birth Street. It gives me a lot of information just in the email itself. It tells me when the BZA meeting is going to occur, what the docket number is, what the type of BZA action is, and gives me a long description of the request itself as well as the requested waivers. There is a link that explains how to get requested feedback, and then which we will be updating to include the new permit types. And also this link here will take you directly to our One app, which will give you access to all of the documents that we have that are publicly available pertaining to this particular action. So I will, show you that here. So this is you should be able to see the one-stop app for that address. The description is here as well, and you can also go to download, and this will show you all of the documents that the city has that have been made publicly available pertaining to this property. So it's a pretty robust tool. We think that this is a good solution for people who are interested in finding out about these types of permits, for them to easily get notice in a way that doesn't strain the city's already limited resources, but gives them all of the information that they might need in order to decide whether they need to lodge an appeal or take any other action on by right permit applications, such as new construction or renovation.
And Ashley, can I just, again, some remedial questions here. One, anybody can sign up for this, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Right.
And you can sign up for any area. You can, I have it for a couple of small areas personally, but you can do an entire council district. You could do citywide, but that would be a lot of information you'd be getting. So you can really tailor it to what your personal concerns are and what you keep abreast of.
And you essentially answered my next question, which is there are multiple places, whether it's districts A and B or A and D or C and D, where their lines are hard to figure out and intersect. So if somebody, for example, wanted to see the upper 9, the lower 9, they could just select that area on the map and just get notices about that.
Correct. You can select a very small area. You can select just your block, or you can select a very large area. So it gives you a lot of flexibility in making sure that the information you get is helpful and targeted for what you need it.
And now, can you spend a minute, so you sort of walk through, and I didn't know about NoticeMe before I got on the council. So I find it an incredibly helpful tool to get a weekly email. I think it comes every Friday, telling the BZA is going to do, what's happening at city planning. So I scroll through it and could see what's going on in District A. But now I think what we want to talk about is how it's going to be updated within the next couple of months. And for people who are looking not only for conditional use issues or for setback issues, but specifically for what I would call more substantive permitting, what's going to be an add-on.
So as of now, we've started preliminary talks with IT and with the Department of Safety and Permits folks who run our llama permitting program, which is where NoticeMe pulls its information from. But essentially, the two types of permits that we are proposing adding to NoticeMe would be new construction, which are permits that have the letters NEWC in the title, as well as structural and non-structural renovation permits. So those would have RNVN or RNVS. These, like I said, are permits that are generally issued by right. You don't have to go to the City Planning Commission or to the Board of Zoning Adjustments to receive these permits. It's sort of a day-to-day function of the department. This would just allow neighbors to know what's going on in their area for those types of permits.
And so can I ask two questions to that? So one would be, if I pick an area of the city, you live in Gentilly, and you decide I really want to look at Elysian Fields, that what NoticeMe would then do in the next couple of months is, if you selected the new construction or reconstruction, would say, okay, pick the address, I'm just going to make this up, 5811 Elysian Fields, this is what's going to happen there, and then somebody is aware of that.
Yes, that's correct. I'm going to go back to the email because I think it's sort of the most helpful way to see what NoticeMe does.
Okay.
But yeah, you'll get a digest either daily or weekly, depending on what you opt for, and it gives you a summary of activity within your areas. It just so happened that in this one, there was only one of the areas that I had selected that had any activity, and it was just one thing. But you would get an entry similar to this. It would tell you the address or whatever you had named the area you selected, and give you, instead of saying BZA hearing, you would see new construction permit with the permit number. You'd be able to go to our one-stop app and view all of the documents. That generally includes plans. It includes the issued permit itself, the application. So you'd have full access essentially to our files without having to go through a public records request process. And that exists now. The one-stop app portion of this already exists. It's just, there's no trigger to notify anyone, and that's where NoticeMe steps in and bridges the gap.
And Ashley, sort of that trigger that you anticipated, sort of my next question is let's say a permit is issued on a Monday or a Tuesday, and the NoticeMe app is set for Fridays, and the email gets sent on that Friday. If somebody either is looking for a denial or looking for an approval, they would know within 3, 4, 5, 6 days that their 45-day limit is triggered by getting that email in very short order. Is that right? That's
correct. Essentially, if a permit was approved Saturday morning, that would be, because the emails go out on Friday night, which I don't know any of our analysts who are working Saturday morning, but if that were to ever happen, that would be sort of the longest gap you'd have. But even that, you would know that your 45 days began to run on the day that the permit was issued, which would be at most, depending on your settings, within 7 days of when the issuance occurred.
Okay. And I know obviously we're in a continuing COVID world, emerging from cyber attack world. Can you kind of help us out a little bit on what a timeline looks like? Because I do think, there's two pieces to this. One is savvy end users, whether they're neighbors themselves or people who use this will sign up as soon as they can. And then B, I think probably between the district offices as well as neighborhood engagement, we want to kind of get the word out when this goes live. Sort of, a general sense, first quarter of 2021. When you think, Ashley, this will be able to be a reality?
I believe so. I've talked to the IT folks and I've talked to our safety and permits folks. The NoticeMe product is something that IT has developed for the city's use. So they would need to do the coding work themselves. They think that assuming everything goes well and nothing else crazy happens, they think 3 months is a pretty reasonable time frame. And our internal department thinks that creating the llama connections could also very easily happen during that time frame. So that's what we're anticipating, provided there are no major changes.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd love to be a part of that because I have some neighborhood organizations that are almost exclusively focused on zoning. I have some that give it to their zoning committee. I have others where you have one person who it is. So I think it'd be great to know when that happens. And ideally, maybe at the next quality of life committee, Ashley, come back when it's ready and kind of show functionality and how it's working so people can see it and touch it and get a feel of how it works.
Absolutely. And I would also encourage people in the meantime, if you are concerned about land use actions, to go ahead and sign up for NoticeMe. While the permits aren't in there, there are so many other information that do appear in the system. And it's really a great way to keep track of what's going on in the land use world.
That's great. Colleagues, does anybody have a question? Because I kind of think to a large degree this satisfies a number of the things that we were trying to balance. I mean, the initial motion, may have had some concerns for people who get caught in gaps, but really and importantly to me, I want to make sure that particularly neighbors who have no idea that something's happening, and then they find out 4 months later that a permit has been issued, and they just weren't savvy enough to go onto one app on a consistent basis. Now we're getting sort of a push notification if they're looking for it. So does anybody have anything to add to this?
No, Joe, I was just going to add that I appreciate you taking this up. I know Ashley office gets email from us all the time. And so this is definitely going to help lessen some of the emails that we get. And we can, we've been promoting NoticeMe.nola.gov to many of our residents, but I think the added feature for new construction and renovation permitting is going to be great, because we do get those as well. Like, what's going on, down the street from my house, and many times we have to basically do our research. So I'm pretty sure my team will be very grateful. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I want to echo that because Ashley, you said something that's important. I think that people forget, which is many of these permits are by right, which just means if you apply the right paperwork and you live in the right zoning district, as an operation of law, as a matter of course, you get it. And so I think what frequently happens to both safety and permits, to the council offices, district ones in particular, is that permit gets issued, neighbors don't know about it, something gets erected and they say, oh, we had no clue, we weren't a part of the process, nobody told us. I see a lot of head nodding. And so this is just a device to let people know, hey, this is something you can get, and it can be tailored as you've showed us. So I really appreciate it, and I think this is a tremendous step forward by everybody in trying to get and push that information out. Councilmember Palmer?
No, I just want to add that I think the great thing about this too is that anybody can use it. It doesn't have to be an organization. And like you said, Joe, in your earlier comments, we have some neighborhood associations that are really highly organized, and it could be a whole committee that focuses on this. It could just be somebody, a smaller neighborhood or even an area that doesn't have a neighborhood association. Anybody can go online and look at this. I think this is a really great, transparent tool. So thank you both.
Yeah, thank you. Ashley, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here.
Happy to help. Thanks.
And then members, moving on to item number, so I guess really as a matter of process, what I should say is I would propose that given the proposed changes that we hold the motion in abeyance for right now. Let's get NoticeMe up and running and see how it looks and works. And it may even make the motion obsolete as a function of getting the information to our constituents. Does that work for everybody? Great. All right. And so moving on to encroachments, Councilmember Palmer has taken the lead in this with certainly with sidewalk cafes and what's been going on. And I think for the public, what's important to understand is it much like notice, the encroachments run a gamut, right? They can be very minor things like outward swinging doors to balconies and galleries and overhangs, awnings, and as I've learned, pedestrian walkways. So one of the things that I think that would be good for everybody to understand is putting these into different categories because of how they operate and their functionality, how they all fit together, whether it is something that is truly a very minor encroachment, like that open swinging door, and then as you get further down, like a sidewalk cafe, then the awning, and then a walkway over a street as a more extreme example. And really to kind of bring some parameters to all of this in terms of what criteria would be for issuance, what an application will look like, and how it will work across the board. And so we're at the initial stages. I really kind of want to thank Missy Quigley and Jennifer Kretschmann, who have started trying to put some pen to paper on this and try and think about it. But I thought it was an important conversation to begin because it's sort of like we're talking with the noticing. This is a process that has kind of seemed to have worked more either in an ad hoc basis or as somebody taking up a piece of it at one time, as we did with the sidewalk cafes. And now we can look a lot more holistically at whether something is minor, partially restrictive, extraordinarily restrictive, and how that fits kind of with what we want as a city going forward. So, colleagues, we're working with the administration on this. I certainly welcome any input that any of you have, but I just thought it was important to kind of begin this discussion, get the ball rolling. Councilmember Palmer.
Yeah, I thank you so much. This is really huge, especially in my district where you have commercial properties inside residential properties. You have a lot of wraparound galleries. I really would like to see an emphasis placed on use because for a residential use where you have a gallery that, that goes over a sidewalk, that's one thing. But if it's a commercial use and they're actually getting tables and chairs or on top of the gallery or and underneath the gallery, that actually increases their, as you know, their floor space, et cetera. And so a lot of times residences can be hit with the same cost, and we just need to be really cognizant of the use of it. Now, obviously now post-COVID, I do think we need to go gently when we talk about, and maybe even have an ability to reevaluate what fair market value is when we talk about use, because of a lot of our restaurants are now being forced outside. So I think there's going to have to be some type of clause. It might be a little confusing, but we do have to look at fair market. And I think the market has been disrupted with post-COVID. And so we have to, if we can give restaurants, coffee shops a break where we can now, I think that's something that we have to look at. Obviously, we have to weigh that within our state constitution that you can't give anything of value away for free. But I do think we have to have some type of trigger that lessens that in times such as this.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right about that. And sort of to me, the flip side of not only being deliberative about how it's done, particularly in this COVID emerging and eventually post-COVID world, is also not that people are sneaking things through, right, during COVID as well. And just, being blunt about that. And so having criteria and lists of how it's going to work makes it accessible to everybody involved.
And we also don't want to disincentivize smart building techniques either, right? Because the way our urban environment has been built is very much along a smart use of space and also along our environment. We have galleries over sidewalks so people aren't walking in the rain. A lot of them have been taken off. I also don't want to see us disincentivize people from putting them back on because they do assist with the, with the urban and environmental landscape.
Yep, I think that's exactly right. Colleagues, I don't know if anybody has any specific encroachment issues, but I did just sort of want to start talking about that because, it certainly has arisen in, I think, almost all of our districts, and we get all of us calls and questions and how does it work? And so I think to spell it out for all of us will make everybody's job easier. Number one, Ashley talked about it. That's sort of the goal here, particularly in a world in which resources are going to be reduced in 2021, is how to make things more cost efficient and run as smoothly as possible. Does anybody have any other comments? All right. Paul, do we have any submitted written comments from anybody? I haven't received any, but I just wanted to see if we had anything.
Okay, council member, give me 1 minute and I'll pull them up. This is Clarissa speaking.
I'm sorry, Clarissa, can you say that again? Do we have any? I couldn't hear.
I'm pulling up the check right now, council member. I'm sorry.
No worries. You're doing great. Thank you so much.
I'm not seeing any council member.
I appreciate it. Well, Councilmember Palmer, I don't think I've eclipsed your fastest GA meeting yet. But I think for Geruso standards, this is expedient. Yeah, I see. Yeah, I also see a lot of head nodding on that. So look, I really appreciate everybody.
Sorry, Councilman.
To me, the purpose of this committee is really twofold. I mean, first and primarily, it's for the constituents served and trying to make things better for them. But then secondly, the district council members are the ones who get, as Cindy said earlier, these routine complaints and how do I learn about this and what happens. And I think, each of you has demonstrated and shown in a number of different ways, whether it's by attending neighborhood meetings, whether it's proposing legislation, whether it's working with the administration on a commitment to trying to make those things easier and better for other people. And I see today's agenda as a step in that direction. I want to thank you for that. With that, I would ask a motion to adjourn.
Councilman, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Paul.
Yeah, sorry, I apologize. There is one public comment that I can read into the record real quickly.
Okay, would you mind doing that?
This is from Justin Schmidt. Introduced by Councilmember Geruso to amend certain provisions, Section 4.8 of the New Orleans Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance, relative to appeals of the Board of Zoning Adjustments of certain decisions of the Director of Safety and Permits, including zoning determinations and verifications and issuance of building or other permits. As some of you likely recall, I have been involved in several pending cases in civil district court regarding certain decisions of the Director of Safety and Permits and the BZA. While proposed motion M2326 does provide for greater notification to the public of certain actions of the Department of Safety and Permits, it does not address some loopholes in the CZO provisions, which the City Attorney's Office has exploited to delay judicial while property owners continues to build illegally in hopes of reaching a point where the property owner with dirty hands can benefit from a detrimental reliance argument based on the department's mistake in issuing the permit in the first place. I forwarded to all of you prior to this meeting my proposed additions to motion M2326, along with the Louisiana Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals jurisprudence supporting my recommendations, and respectfully request that the committee and the full council consider including some of the suggested revisions to the final version of motion M2326 that is adopted by the council. Thank you, Justin Schmidt. That's the only comment.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. And Justin, I mentioned it earlier, but I did see the email before we came. And I think what we'll do, like we said, is convene another quality of life committee meeting in the first quarter of 2021, see what the NoticeMe looks like. And then that way we've provided an avenue, and I think a robust one, for people to be able to see what's going on with regard to these major permitting issues. So thank you for submitting those remarks. With that, motion to adjourn.
So move.
Moved by Councilmember Banks.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Palmer. Anybody opposed, speak up. All right, with that, we stand adjourned. Thank you very much for making the time, everybody. Good seeing you. Take care.